Are you gaining weight rapidly and you've tried all, but you still don't seem to be able to put your finger on what could be causing this? Hello, friends, and welcome to this week's episode of How Do You Keep Well? Thank you very much for taking time to listen to this podcast and for your support to me as well. It means a lot. But my greatest joy is seeing the change that is taking place in you. Yes, you. On this podcast, I'll be sharing stories, scientific insights, and practical tips to inspire and motivate you to be the best version of your healthy self. I'm Dr. Jaye. I'll be your host. I'll be cheering you on this exciting journey towards a happier, healthier, and meaningful life. Do me a favor, make sure you subscribe and share any insights you have learned from this episode with your friends and family. So together we can keep on keeping well. Let's dive straight into today's episode. How does sleep affect our weight and ultimately our well being? I know one of the major struggles in midlife is people worrying about their weight gain. Ah, in certain cultures, this could actually be a sign of being wealthy, when people put on weight. But honestly speaking, I think this is a bad idea. We really need to shelve this idea, put it away completely. I'll tell you a story. I recollect my very early days of being married, and I had gone back to my parents to visit my mom. And then she called me aside to ask me if everything was okay. I was obviously quite surprised and perplexed as to why she was asking me this question. I certainly did not feel stressed and I did not have any, special words with my husband, that would have made me look disgruntled or anything like that. To my surprise, she then went on to say people who live abroad, they come back home, they look fresh and plump. And she said, yeah, you're looking fresh, but I did not look like a married woman. She said I was still looking like a student. I gasped, Mommy. I was so surprised. So I started showing her pictures of very wealthy people who managed to maintain a healthy BMI range, irrespective of which part of the world they live and irrespective of their marital status. So that's a story, that always stuck in my brain. Your BMI is not an indication of the money you have in the bank. As we all approach midlife, definitely the pressures of life begin to have an impact on our well being. So it's not unusual for priorities to move around, for instance, depending on the phase of life you're in. For example, career women who have had their children in their 30s would usually have some juggling to do in midlife that helps them to maintain their work and life balance. And sometimes they just have absolutely no time to care for themselves. Oh, I remember those days when I could have a line on Saturday mornings. I can't remember when I last did this at all. Okay. So how do we keep well? How do we keep well then in this frantic life that we have around us? I believe it would require taking steps every day through the day to reconnect us back to ourselves, to reconnect back to our being. Being meaning be, just being. Okay. That little moment away from distractions, that special moment with a friend, that special lunch, with other people, reading a book, or just literally taking time to look up into the skies and enjoying nature. All of these little moments can create a deep sense of feeling well. Now, let's go back to the topic for today. If you recollect our last podcast, we talked about our sleep and our well being directly linked. If you sleep well, you are likely to keep well. Poor sleep can increase the risk of poor health. But today, I would also want to add an extra point. Poor sleep can cause weight gain. Having a good sleep routine definitely has an impact on our spirits and our social interactions. We're able to connect with God, we're able to connect with people better. We have a deeper perspective of things. It's easier to appreciate nature and it's easier to feel present with people. Good sleep definitely has an impact on our physical well being, how we eat, how we exercise, how we handle stress. Scientists have actually found that lack of sleep in 24 hours is similar to the effect of alcohol overdose in the system. That's how intense these things can be. Lack of sleep can also produce a diabetic like state in otherwise healthy people. So that means it can make your body feel like you have excessive sugar in your bloodstream despite not having diabetes. How strange. Now let's look at intellectually. Having a good sleep helps you to reason things out at a higher level. You're no longer touchy. You are able to solve problems strategically. Your creativity is enhanced. Your brain cells have been refurbished overnight. So you're able to give attention to detail. Tired people are less productive at work, no doubt about it. Unfortunately, this can lead to a cycle of burnout. Good sleep definitely has an impact on our emotional and mental well being. Lack of sleep can make mood swing worse, particularly during the menopause transition for women in midlife. A period of sleep deficit can also place people at risk of developing depression. Now, sleep is definitely an active part of keeping well. There's nothing passive about sleep at all. We already know that in midlife, the number of changes that is taking place in every sphere of our life. But one that I often hear people talk about a lot, especially people I work with, is the anxiety about the change of their physical appearance. I recollect a story that a woman once told me, and she said to me, Dr. Jaye, I can't really look at myself in the mirror anymore. I don't like what I'm seeing. Oh my goodness, this really shook me up. And I looked at her and like, why wouldn't you look at yourself in the mirror? That's how intense the changes physically that women experience can have an impact on their emotional and physical well-being. Body image, body shaming, confused self-identity, self-acceptance are major issues in midlife. And I can promise you there's never a good time to start working on yourself more than it is right now. Little steps make such a big difference. One of the ways you can help your body to maintain a good weight is by sleeping well. I'm really sorry to happen on this month, but I can promise you I do have lots of different topics I talk about that relates to our well-being. And each month I will be bringing you some specific topics for that month. So please make sure you stay tuned because definitely we will be talking about something different and exciting next month. All I hope to do is to keep you inspired and motivated to live life well, especially in midlife. Now, here is a little science for you before we talk about the strategies. Remember, it's all about the stories, the science, and the strategies to keeping well. So, you may recollect in the last podcast where we talked about sleep, we talked about our biological clockwork, the circadian rhythm that controls our sleep and wake cycle, as well as the sleep hormone melatonin that is produced in the brain that helps us to sleep. Today, I will talk about what happens when you sleep. That's the sleep cycle itself. I would confess I am a general practitioner, and that is what I do best. I am a generalist. I am not an expert in sleep, but I am a family doctor and I have an interest in helping you regain your energy to live a long, happy life. So I would aim to explain this in a simple but fun way. There is a whole field of medicine devoted to studying sleep, and there are some great sleep scientists out there if you wanted to find out more. But if you want my style of explaining, I would break it down in very simple, easy to understand way. So look at it this way. There are two stages of sleep. You might have heard about it before. NREM and REM. That's the non-rapid eye movement and the rapid eye movement. I would explain it using a roller coaster ride in a moment. But first of all, I just want to lay this foundation. Over the course of a period of sleep, you know, these two stages of sleep, I talked about the NREM and REM sleep alternate cyclically. Now, how these alternations happen in these two stages is not yet fully understood. But what we know is that if a part of this phase is affected due to, for instance, a shorter phase or an absent phase, then it can cause a sleep problem. For example, instead of entering sleep through the correct door, which is the non rapid eye movement, non NREM, some individuals go directly into the bedroom. Forgive me, but some people go directly into the REM sleep without going through the door, which is the NREM. Now, these people have a condition we call narcolepsy. And honestly, I have spoken to some of my clients before. Narcolepsy can be such a big problem and has such a big impact on physical, emotional well being at all levels. But today's topic is not about narcolepsy, but if you do have this or concerns about this, make sure you seek help. So let's go back again to the very beginning. A sleep episode begins with a short period of the NREM, and it goes through different stages from 1 to 3 to 4 and back to the REM, which is the rapid eye movement. However, we don't remain in REM sleep for the remainder of the night, but rather we cycle through the different stages of NREM and REM throughout the night. Now, sleep occurs in 5 stages. So you are awake one moment and you begin to drift up gradually to sleep, and then you don't know what happens, isn't it? So let's name these stages the waking phase, the awake phase, maybe, the first or N1, N2, N3, and REM. Now, these stages N1 to N3 are considered the non rapid eye movement sleep. That's what I call the NREM. And each stage leads to progressively deeper sleep. Now, approximately 75% of the sleep is spent in the NREM stages, with the majority spent in that second stage, number two. Yes, that number two. The REM sleep constitutes only about 20 to 25% of our sleeping time. So, for a normal night sleep, we go through this cycle from NREM to REM and back to NREM and to REM. We go through it 4 to 5 times. And we go in this stage 1, 2, 3, back to 2, and then REM sleep. Now, a complete cycle takes roughly about 90 to 110 minutes. And that's where perhaps that calculation came from, that adults need to sleep for about 6 to 7 hours to have a good sleep, because each night you do need about 4 to 5 sleep cycles, and each of this cycle takes about 90 minutes to 110 minutes, about 2 hours. So the first REM sleep, so we talked about the NREM and REM. The first REM is very short, and as the night progresses, longer periods of REM, and you have longer periods of REM, and then there's a decreased time in deep sleep. And these second cycles, the later cycles, they tend to be quite long. Okay, now back to my roller coaster analogy. Let's imagine, we're all hanging out together. We're going on the roller coaster in one of these theme parks with our teenage children or grandchildren. And you're all lining up outside and you watch people going past, zoom, bam. And you're like someone like me, I'm dreading it. And you watch people really excited going up and down. And that is what happens with the rhythm of our slumber. To start with, you're all pumped up in the line. That means your sleep tank is full. And then you begin to fall asleep slowly, just the same way the roller coaster starts very slowly. Then the sleep cycle begins to pick up in speed as you go through the night, just like the roller coaster goes. And then you begin to go up and down, up and down. And finally, you get to that stage in La La Land where everything pauses. You have absolutely no idea what's going on. You are in dreamland. That's deep sleep. Then the whole cycle starts again. Back to that slow start, going up and down, and then to the deep sleep. Now, imagine what happens when the roller coaster suddenly stops in the middle of a cycle. How does that feel? When there is an imbalance in that roller coaster ride, can you imagine what impact it's going to have on you? So, really, if one bit of that roller coaster lasts too long, or you are in a particular place in a roller coaster, maybe hanging up in the air for a long time when you shouldn't be there, you can imagine how you will feel. So, the entire symphony of rest is harmed if there's one phase lasting too long or is of poor quality. It leaves you craving for that invigorating feeling of renewal. Now, here's the deal. If one part of the sleep cycle doesn't last as long as it should or isn't top notch, it definitely leaves you unrefreshed. Just very similar to if the roller coaster ride gets wonky and there's an interruption, it's not as much fun, isn't it? So, what we really want is to have a steady, cozy sleep cycle that is smooth and groovy for that ultimate well rested feeling when we wake up. I received a very wonderful feedback after my last podcast about the way I talk and how it's actually helped some people to sleep. To be honest, I wasn't too sure how to take the comment, but I'm glad that if that was one thing that has helped someone to have a better sleep, so be it. All the sleep talk can make you fall asleep. So if you're still awake at this stage, I have done well. Here are 5 ways your sleep can affect your ways. 5 ways. I'll keep it nice and simple. Having a short sleep duration significantly increases the risk of obesity. Now, there was a study I read and it analyzed several other studies. They put all these other studies together and they analyzed them and they concluded on this finding. A short sleep duration, first of all, is anything that is less than 6 to 7 hours in an adult. Okay. Now, the finding they found, or the finding was that when people sleep for shorter period of time, the risk of obesity rises in these people compared to others who had a longer sleep duration. So you can't afford to skimp on sleep if you want to maintain a great weight in midlife and beyond. So I'm just joking here, but for every additional hour of sleep, your waistline drops. This is what research is telling us, isn't it? So you are really best placed to start working on your sleep early on in midlife before the forces of nature take place. The midlife middle bulge. We don't want that to take place. Okay. Now, I must say here that lack of sleep is not the only contribution to the risk of developing obesity. There are several other associative factors, which maybe at some point we will talk about during one of my podcast shows. Now, the second reason, when you sleep poorly, you crave for food more. And it's not just any kind of food, it's the type that releases sugar and fat into the bloodstream rapidly. And this is why poor sleep generally increases your hunger levels, making you crave for food with high calorie and sugar content. Now, you may not know this, but there's a hungry hormone. It's called ghrelin and is released into the stomach to tell your body it needs food. So, when you haven't slept well, the level of this hunger hormone kind of goes high. But it's got a twin brother. The twin brother is called leptin, and it reminds me of what we used to say when we were younger, lepa. I wonder if that word was formed from that hormone. But leptin is the hormone that tells your body that you've eaten enough and you're full and you should stop eating. Now, unfortunately, when people are not sleeping well, the balance is gone all over the place. There's more ghrelin, which tells your body it's hungry, and there's less leptin, which tells your body that, yeah, you're not full. Now, imagine people who suffer with a problem, for instance, like sleep apnea, which is a condition that can cause people to stop breathing when they are sleeping, and it really disrupts their sleep cycle. And unfortunately, most of the time is due to the blockage of air getting to the brain, and the brain keeps waking people up, when they have this condition. Now, imagine for this kind of people where they're not sleeping well, they are again at an increased risk of obesity because they have problems regulating hormones that control hunger and satisfaction because of the lack of sleep. So it becomes a catch-22 situation. So there are lots of studies that show that people who are sleep deprived, they eat more. They are more hungry, they crave for food more, they have larger portion sizes, and they eat more chocolates. So when you sleep well, your body makes more of leptin, and that helps you to feel fuller for longer. So the third reason is that poor sleep increases your chances of spending more on food. It can affect your self control and your decision making abilities. So, as well as it increases your brain reaction to food. For example, your sense of smell is heightened towards food with high calories. Can you imagine that? So, if you have ever woken up craving Oreo ice cream, and it seems you can even smell it when you're driving past McDonald's, well, that is a sign that you haven't slept well. Oh, hang on, maybe I'm just speaking for myself here. Now, the fourth reason I think is that late night sleeping means you're staying up longer. It creates a larger window for time to eat, especially if you have had dinner earlier in the evening. So, for example, let's say you ate your dinner about 6 p.m. and you're still awake at about 1 a.m. at night. You're going to be hungry at some point between dinner and bedtime. And if you're already experiencing sleep deficiency, you may be much more likely to opt for the less nutritious options. That's because sleep deficiency increases your appetite, your craving for high calorie, high fat food. Interestingly, late night eating, anyway, whether or not it's because you're not sleeping well or because of other reasons, late night eating is associated with greater weight gain. So a higher body mass index and decreased fat oxidation, therefore making weight loss more difficult. So generally speaking, eating at night is never a good idea. But not sleeping at a good time may increase your risk of eating at night. Poor sleep increases your calorie intake because of this, because of late night snacking, larger portion sizes, and the time, literally the time that you have available to eat. So, my suggestion is try to limit your food intake 2 to 3 hours before going to bed. If you do really, really desperately need to eat something, then consider having a small protein rich snack, such as Greek yogurt, for instance. Always have Greek yogurt at home. So my final point today is about physical activity, a lot of you know that I do enjoy walking. So I always talk about physical movement a lot. Now, the lack of sleep would decrease physical activity. And unfortunately, when you're not moving well, then your sleep is not great as well. It's a bit like a two-way traffic. When someone hasn't slept well, they have this daytime fatigue. They're less motivated to exercise and more likely to be sedentary, which causes more issues. Trying your best to regulate your sleeping pattern increases the motivation to become more active and it enhances the athletic performance. Now, both of these contributes to weight loss, but also it helps to improve your sleep. So, those are 5 good reasons how sleep can affect your weight or how you manage your weight. If I may, to summarize these points, I would like to reframe them in a more positive way. When you sleep well, you're more likely not to become obese. When you sleep well, you are more likely to eat more nutritious food. When you sleep well, you are able to spend wisely and choose more nutritious types of food. When you sleep well, your brain reaction to food is more sensible and controlled. When you sleep well, you regain energy to move more. Okay, I get it. I have had times when I skimp on sleep when I'm doing some of my favorite things at night, like reading, writing, or researching, or even gisting late at night with my dear husband. Or maybe sometimes I've had the odd coffee later than usual. What do I do? These two strategies work well for me. When I manage to go back into bed and I'm struggling to sleep, I do a very quick scan from my toes. I squeeze and relax each section of my body, from my toes to my ankles to my knee, to my thighs, to my pelvic floors, even to my stomach. But honestly, I don't even know where I get out. I would have fallen asleep. If I haven't, I'd begin to take some really deep breathing exercises, like really focusing on my breathing. And before I know what's happening, I certainly switch off. Try it. I also make sure I go to bed at my usual time the next day, particularly if I have slept late the night before. I try to never miss 2 days in a row. That is one principle that has stuck with me. Never miss 2 days in a row when you're trying to develop a new habit. If you miss it one day, don't miss it the next time. Here are two other strategies that may work well for you. Try to go to bed if you're struggling to get into bed or you're finding that you're going to bed later each night, maybe because you've slept during the day or something. Well, I would like to encourage you, try to get into bed at a particular time every night, or maybe 30 minutes earlier than the last time. So, for instance, if you slept at 1 o'clock the night before and you really are struggling, why not try maybe going to bed at 12:30 and then trying some of these strategies I've mentioned before? If you're still not able to sleep, read a book or do some breathing exercises or listen to my podcasts rather than using a screen or scrolling on your phone or watching TV. So it's your turn. What strategies do you use when you don't seem to be able to sleep? Please don't mention you distract yourself by scrolling on your phone or watching TV in your bedroom. That's not a good idea at all. It's been so great talking to you about sleep this month. Now, look out for our next topics over the next couple of months. We will be discussing a topic per month, and you will find this available on my podcast or my social media platforms. I would like you to please share, subscribe, and like my podcast so that it can be pushed up the ranks and more people can listen to it and be helped. Remember, midlife is for living life well. So keep on keeping well. Have a great week, all. Bye bye.